And now finally, as promised, here's my interview with the First Sea Lord. Now, I know the dust has just about settled on the Defence Review, and it's been the result of many months of debates and showdowns at Downing Street. You must be personally feeling a bit battle-weary.
I don't know about battle-weary. I mean, command of ships and submarines sort of prepares you for this sort of stuff. But it's been challenging. It's been difficult. There's been some robust argument, debate, discussion in the corridors of power, as they say, up here in Whitehall. But one has to set all of that against the realities of the context in which we've been doing this. A new government determined to make savings across the public sector. Defence was never going to be immune. We had to do our bit. In the end, we've come out with a much smaller savings requirement than many other departments of state.
Well, talking now specifically about the Navy, there are some 5,000 jobs to be cut. Where are they going to be cut from?
Well, I think the key here is to understand the process that we've got to go through to establish exactly the answer to that question. We've got to look across the Navy to decide where reluctantly we're going to have to allow people to go. That's going to take a bit of work. It's going to take about 6 months' worth of work, we think, to see and establish within which branches we can afford to lose people and in which branches we can't. After that 6-month period, there'll be a redundancy scheme where people can volunteer, given that their branch is one that we can accept reductions in. And then after that, there'll have to be a compulsory redundancy scheme, which will start in about a year's time. I don't want people worried that they're going to find out tomorrow that we're compulsorily making them redundant, because that's just not true. Those people that are compulsorily made to leave will have another year beyond that before they actually have to leave the service.
So what about promotion? Is that going to be affected?
That's a very important part of this whole process. It's very important that we focus on the majority of people in the naval services that are going to remain. It's got to ensure that those people that do remain have promotion prospects to satisfy their ambitions of staying in the Navy.
So with that in mind then, presumably recruitment will continue?
We must continue to recruit, because all of the people that get to the top come in at the bottom. You can't recruit sideways. We have to throttle back a little, and we have to be selective a little more in terms of those people that we're going to be coming into the recruiting system, but we will not stop recruiting. We must not stop recruiting.
Ultimately then, we're going to end up with a smaller Navy, but will the operational tempo remain the same?
Well, you can't do more with less. You can't do the same with less. You have to do less with less. Now, that might not mean removing one of what we call our standing operational commitments, but it might mean doing it very differently. We can't have more operational tempo. Indeed, the Navy's been running quite hot up to this point as it is. So we've got to somehow balance the way we do these jobs in the future.
Now, another question I know that people have been asking a lot is what's going to happen to allowances and pensions for those who remain?
Well, allowances are being looked at. Reductions in some areas, it'll affect different people differently. But again, the information will be available as soon as we possibly can.
And what about pensions?
Well, pensions are nothing, of course, to do with the SDSR.
No, they seem to have been lumped in.
Yeah, well, and quite understandably, people are concerned about how it affects them. This is a review being done by Lord Hutton. The bit of the pension that you have already subscribed to is almost certainly going to remain as is. And if there's a change of the rules in March, then there'll be a new pension scheme put on the top of that. But that which you've accrued already will actually remain within the bank, if you like.
One of the most talked about issues at the moment has been the decision to maintain the build on the 2 aircraft carriers that won't be ready until 2020. Ultimately, isn't this going to lead to a massive loss of capability in the meantime?
Well, this is the one incoherence of the SDSR, which, as you'd expect, I fought hard against. You only get the sort of money that we were looking for here by a removal of one type of aircraft. And there was a lot of debate. There's lots of good reasons to keep the Harrier, and I portrayed them all, I hope. There's lots of good reasons to retain the Tornado. In the end, it was a decision made collectively that it would be the Tornado that we keep. That leaves, therefore, me and the Royal Air Force and Defence as a whole with a challenge of not transferring the capability of carrier strike from our current aircraft carriers to our new ones, but there's a gap. We've got to make sure that we can pull through some expertise to allow us to feed the growth path to be able to deliver strike aircraft off our new QE-class aircraft carriers in the future.
Sticking with aircraft carriers, the Ark Royal, the flagship of the fleet, is going into early retirement. Not only that, but the media actually leaked the story before the ship's captain was informed about it. That must have left a sour
really,
taste.
Kate, of all of this, and it's been, as I indicated earlier on, a battleground at times, this was the most annoying thing for me because it gave an indication of a breakdown in the command chain. It was spun. It was spun in, I can use this word, disgracefully, in my opinion, such that I was left on that Tuesday morning stomping around this building trying to recover a situation which was almost irrecoverable. And I apologise, not because we got it wrong, because the system got it wrong, to those people that found out that their ship or their squadron was being disbanded before the democratic process of the Prime Minister telling the Parliament and me being able to inform my COs in a timely fashion. I was really annoyed about that.
Moving on now to naval estates. What reductions are happening there?
Well, we've got to be realistic about this. I want to make sure that we spend money on the output. Ships, submarines, aircraft, Royal Marines out doing the business that the country pays them for. Therefore, one wants to try and reduce as much as possible the input measures, the support measures. Vitally important training, of course, but if we can narrow down the scale of the estate that we're doing this on, that's got to be a benefit to the Navy in terms of spending its money more wisely.
Ultimately, there is still a fantastic career to be had in the Navy.
Look, I see a Navy already focusing and having to prepare itself for what they call the 2020 force, which is Queen Elizabeth class aircraft carrier with CV fixed-wing aircraft, with embarked Chinook and Merlin helicopters, with embarked Royal Marine Force, supported by LPDs, protected by Type 45 destroyers, protected by Type 23 frigates, and indeed, by that stage, very obviously coming online, the new Type 26 frigates, protected by Astute-class submarines, which, of course, one of the up arrows of the SDSR is that we now know we're going to get 7 of them, projecting UK influence around the world and interjecting where we need to. I think that's quite an exciting future.